Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. Joan served the state of California as a member on the Arts Council and on the Film Commission. She was formerly on the Architectural Commission and fulfilled 2 terms on the Fine Arts Commission for the city of Beverly Hills. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview magazine, Condé Nast Publications, and the Hearst Corporation, Joan covered the world of fashion, the mysteries of food, the excitement of theater, and the international art scene. She continues to find people who are on the cutting edge of their professions. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're on location as the guest of Donnell Dadigan at the Hollywood Museum on Highland Avenue. Waiting to be profiled are artist Ann Thornycroft and writer, actress Jane Press. Artist Ann Thornycroft was born in England, earned a diploma in art at the Chelsea School of Art, a BA from Central School of Art, and spent a year at the Brighton College of Art. She was awarded a fellowship for individual artists from the NEA, and in Ann's work, you will know that she's been exhibited in galleries across America and many, many public collections, and she works in giclée, paper, and canvas. So, did you set out to be an artist, Ann?
Yes, I did, because I hated taking exams. And so the thing that I enjoyed most was doing art, even when I was very young. And the nicest teachers were always the art teachers. So I took the easy way out, much to the despair of my parents.
Who wanted you to be?
Who wanted me to go to Oxford or Cambridge and be an academic.
Oh, well.
But I really upset all their plans.
But I think you approach your art in a kind of an academic way.
Yeah, I'm very interested in the history of art and the and especially in modernism and 20th century art, the birth of abstract art. And I'm English. I had a very academic high school.
Right. So let's talk about that a little bit. English, an artist, academics. But when you came to the United States, you won an NEA award. You were awarded a lot of things. And you went to all your art school in London. Was being in the U.S. and being in England different as an artist?
Yes.
It was.
Well, I actually left England when it was still unusual, especially in England, for women to be artists. I mean, there were, like Bridget Riley was a little bit older than me, and she obviously was very famous, but she was more of the exception. And my heroine when I was in art school was Helen Frankenthaler, because she seemed to be doing something very revolutionary and even telling the guys.
But she was in America.
And so she was in America, and I loved a lot of the attitudes of the Americans. They're very open in terms of showing their work. Like in London in the 60s, you didn't really go to famous artist studios.
Is that right?
The only person was David Hockney, who was a friend, but he was different. I mean, you weren't invited.
But were you hanging out with a group of artists? Were there artists at your art school?
Well, they are teachers, but they seem to be very, very old people.
So they didn't have you, I see.
It was in the 60s, it was revolution, and things were changing very much.
And talking about women at that point, were there a lot of women in your classes?
There were some, but this is the classic thing that I tell people, that one of my professors said to the few women, said, "We're not training you to be painters, we're training you to be painters' wives."
Is that right?
Actually said that to me.
Well, you had to learn how to do that.
So I had to learn how to do that since I then became one.
Yes, you did.
No, but I thought that was...
So was your training good? Because,
yeah.
If you marry an artist, then it's like an actor and actress, right? You have this kind of play.
It's difficult.
Yes.
I mean, I think it must be very difficult if you're working in the same discipline. You know,
Right.
my ex-husband wasn't actually a painter, so we didn't have that kind of competitive problem.
No. But they should have been teaching the men how to be husbands
Yes,
of women painters too.
But it was a very cool, exciting time, and how I came to be in America was that there was a young man sculptor who is an American visiting artist at the Central, and he came there to work with the famous British metal sculptors. And so we got together, and that's how I first came to America in '66.
Did he continue working here?
And he was from New York, and he still is in New York.
Who was that?
His name was Joel Perlman, and he still does metal sculpture.
And was he learning? Was he teaching when he came to England? When he came to Central?
He was like a graduate student, just doing a visiting year.
So what kind of work were you doing
Back then?
in London, and then what kind of work were you doing here, and how different was it?
Well, it's very interesting to me because of I don't know how many actual different things that I brought into my work. I think everything was really there always. It's just that I've gone in different directions from like, for example, my final show was very minimal work.
You mean at school, your final show?
Yeah. In painting. It was very, very hard edge, minimal work, which sometimes I still do. I mean, now I play with it. But also the thing that I studied a lot there was etching, and now I've gone back recently to doing etching, which is so fabulous.
So what would you call your style? Because the pieces on the set are very different.
Two different, okay. But I am a little bit odd in that I don't just have one style. I'll go back to certain styles.
Like you're talking
For example, this kind of grid painting, I started doing in the mid-90s using encaustic wax, beeswax, mixed with pigment. And over the years, I've gone back to it. And this past January, I had a show of paintings. They were a little bit bigger than that, but they were all done in this style.
And I remember those paintings, but they didn't have a definite grid. They created the grid.
Right. They were a little bit, some of them were much softer.
Yes.
But they're still made with a 2-inch. I call it a
they
grid.
are on their grid.
Yeah, it's a 2-inch structure.
But
this is a 12-inch.
This is also structured the same way?
Yeah, everything is built with this structure, which I find very helpful in terms of putting on the paint, but also it allows me to use a lot of color and not have it go completely out of control.
So what do you call it? What would you call this?
Well, it's been called sort of
is there a style?
Organic, geometric abstraction. I don't know.
But this we can call a grid.
These, yes. Well, when I came to New York in the 60s, in '69, that's when I started living in New York, the grid was a big thing used by artists. It was the minimal, and Agnes Martin, of course, was my heroine, but Sol LeWitt was also
they were,
really
weren't they?
And a lot of artists did their drawings on graph paper. It was a huge thing. It was being more minimal. It was throwing away a lot of the things that they tried to make me do in art school, like we had to do life drawing every day, and it was like freedom. We didn't have to do that anymore. And I was always very drawn personally to abstraction.
But you talk about having to do life paintings. This piece is a portrait of me,
right,
which is a grid. And it just looks like a grid. Explain it.
Okay. So when I was invited to make a portrait of you, I had a few months before been to New York and I saw the Picasso black and white show at the Guggenheim, and they were the most beautiful, so many beautiful portraits, drawings and paintings that he'd done. And I thought, when I'm looking at you and looking at pictures of you, and I knew that how I wanted to get my process going. And so I started with some little sketches.
That's what I mean. You were
book.
sketching. You drew my face, and you drew things. So it means you can draw.
Oh, I still have it. Yeah, and I
That's what I'm getting at.
Oh, yes, and I'm very interested in drawing. I mean, I think that it's very important, and it's such a wonderful way of always having something to do.
So those drawings then transferred in your mind to the grid?
Well, not just in my mind.
Oh, but on the canvas.
Then I actually started with charcoal pencil. You know, your actual face is in there somewhere.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Oh,
and
so you start on the canvas like that?
Yes, and then I started doing very kind of washy paint, and then I simplified, then I scraped the whole thing down, which is something that, for example, Diebenkorn always, I mean, it's a very accepted way of working, to start and then take away. So you add and then you take away. So then, and by then I kind of knew what colors I wanted, and so underneath there's some more natural colors, but a lot of things got covered up, and then I had to put in your color, and then I decided what I wanted your color to be.
I see. And then you went.
It so happens some of the pictures of you had on this dress that was this beautiful bluey gray color, and anyway, I just thought,
so
this
it's perfect.
happened, and some of it's your jewelry, and
it's all there. But the interesting thing was, from life drawing to sketching like a portrait, but then the process that got into the grid. So it's like just pulling away in a way.
It's pulling, yes, it's pulling away and crystallizing,
and adding,
kind of, and making it something more intense. And also this thing that I had to make it mine in some way. I know so many people have done portraits of you, and if I were going to start thinking about actually having a finished realistic painting of you, then all these other artists would come into my head. And oh no, that looks like Picasso. That looks like this, but that
I see.
And so I abandoned that idea and thought, okay, I'll do something that's recognizably mine.
Right. Which is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And before we leave, when you paint these grid paintings, do they always start out with something underneath them like that? Oh, they do. They always start with
always start out with very loose paint. Either painted on the floor or leaning against the wall. There's always
a subject. Is there always a subject?
Sometimes I'm often from more of a landscape, memory, something. But yes, over the years I've kept photographs of my paintings as they progress, because they go through these stages, and sometimes I look through them, and sometimes now I go, why did I keep on painting on that? Well, that's interesting, you know. And so yes, the work is very much. I love the process of it.
I see that now. I see how you get to the grid in the final. Well, I know you work in giclée, which is a print process.
That's something. Okay, this is a new thing in the art industry, and it's not. I just have chosen certain paper pieces of mine and had scans made, and so people can have giclées made from those.
Oh,
that's what it means.
I see.
The original printmaking, I do a monoprints, etching, and etchings with chine collé, which are cut paper, and so that's very exciting to me. And I just finished a new series, and every week I go and print.
Oh, so you do, but you print your own
Yeah.
On your own way,
Well,
not on a
well,
scanning.
I go to a shop where there's a big press, and you know, I have learned how to do it, but there's always help.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
And if you want to edition something, then you can hire people to do it. But so far I've only wanted one-off.
I like that.
Prints.
And I'm sure you're going to show them somewhere, and we'll keep our eyes open to see where they're going to be. And I thank you so much for coming today.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure.
And don't go away. We'll be right back with writer Jane Press. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're here on location at the Hollywood Museum on Highland Avenue in the heart of Hollywood. And I'm with writer, actress Jane Press, who was born and raised in Brooklyn, came to LA as a teenager, and graduated from Chatsworth High. She comes from a showbiz family, so she didn't have to go very far to get to where you were, did you?
No, I didn't.
You loved the theater as a
I
child.
love the theater.
And always?
Always. I grew up watching my mother on stage.
Oh, that's why. And your mother was an actress?
Yes, a stage actress.
Oh,
She did a little television, but mostly on stage.
but was she here in LA?
Mm-hmm.
And so where was she acting?
She was acting in theaters around.
Just like you're doing?
Just around, just like I'm doing.
As a teenager, you did start, and you wrote this monologue about Marlon Brando's parrot?
I was Minor Bird.
Oh, it was a minor bird.
That's how,
Minor
yeah.
bird and parrot, they both talk, don't they?
Yes, yes, yes. I think the parrot speaks in its own voice. The Minor Bird picks up the exact tone and inflection. It's
Oh, it
amazing.
does. But they remember the same way?
Well, they will pick up whatever is repeated most where they're staying. So if they're in a household,
But why did you do that?
why did I do what?
Write that.
Why did I write that? I was in a women's writing group, and we were going to write they were all actors, and they were going to write monologues.
Oh.
So this is a funny story that we've always told in my family, and I wrote it as a monologue.
Oh, it was a
And
story that was like, I see.
It was, and then at a theater in Carmel, I live now in Monterey, and in Carmel, which is where I sometimes work, tiny little Carmel has 6 different theater venues. At one of them, they have a yearly, an annual monologue competition, and so I was one of the winners. And so I did it.
Did you say you did it? You did the monologue?
I
You
did
wrote
it.
it?
And I was one of the winners, and so I performed it, and they were wonderful.
Is there a group?
There are many different groups that come in, but
I
they,
see.
as an entity, they were very supportive. And I ended up writing another scene, the Mahjong scene,
Oh, you did?
which we presented as a staged reading, and that went so well that I just kept adding to it.
But why was the Marlon Brando something that your family talked about?
Come see the play, and
Oh,
you'll see.
Because this is in your play. Okay, we haven't gotten
It's
to
the
your
opening
play
monologue of My Mother's Keeper.
Keeper.
This is
Right.
my grandmother and her mother. And the play, My Mother's Keeper, is the story of 4 generations of mothers and daughters in the same show business family.
Oh, that's how, okay, that's what the monologue is. And then we know why your family told it and why it was part of it. Okay, let's go to My Mother's Keeper.
Yes.
I want to talk about your uncle, too, because he was a big influence on you, a big
Yes.
award-winning producer, director, actor, everything.
Writer.
So let's talk about My Mother's Keeper. Where is it being shown now? It's shown all over. You've played it all over.
My Mother's Keeper, my Mother's Keeper had its debut in Carmel on Mother's Day weekend. And the plan is to produce it to coincide to open every Mother's Day all over, just like the Vagina Monologues
Right.
is produced every Valentine's Day. This is an absolutely universal theme because everybody had or has a mother.
Right. And there's
So-
always a Mother's Day.
There's always a Mother's Day. We open at the Electric Lodge Theater in Venice.
Right.
And
It's a small little theater.
it's 99 seats,
Uh-huh.
so it's a waiver production.
And then what are all the things that went into writing this?
My life.
Your life.
My mother's life. My grandmother's life and her mother's life.
Okay, but who remembers everything? Your mother, too? You remember
Oh, yes.
everything?
I remember everything.
Were there
That's part of the book.
diaries?
There weren't diaries. I remember everything. And I was immersed. I was determined to provide and to write great roles for women in their 50s to late 60s.
Because then you can cast those women.
Exactly,
Right? We need
exactly.
them to be on stage.
Absolutely. At that age, women are just come into their own as people and as actresses.
Right.
And in the media, it
It's
seems
true.
like they disappear. We are reduced to playing old ladies. Jessica
Which-
Lange, anybody? Jessica Lange is my age exactly, which is 62. This is what 62 looks like. And
the energy.
She is, yes.
The
and
energy.
she's always cast as old lady. She's not old yet. Or we're tricked out to try to pretend that we're in our 40s. We're not.
So how many people are in your play?
There are 7 women and an 11-year-old girl.
Is that right?
Yes.
So it is a total female cast.
Yes.
How did you cast it?
Brooklyn Jewish, authentic Brooklyn Jewish.
So that's what you called for?
Yes.
And
Which there are so.
what about
the
your
cast is
grandmother's role?
fabulous.
Did you find it all?
Yeah, absolutely.
And your mother?
absolutely.
Is your mother playing herself?
Absolutely. No, 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 no. My mother is 83, but we
So?
see her. This is a memory play, so it goes fluidly back and forth between 1914 and 1988. And so the woman that we see the woman that plays me is a fabulous actress.
It's not you?
And- no, I play me,
Oh,
which
that's
is
what
a
I mean.
trick.
You play you, but who plays your mother? This other
Susan
lady?
Giosa, who's just a fabulous actress. They all are. They're all equity working actresses. They're wonderful.
What I wondered, if you could play all the roles.
Oh yes.
You could.
Oh yes, absolutely. In fact, I drive the actresses crazy. The actors
Do it like
crazy
this?
because I'm right. Right.
Who's directing?
Robin McKee, who is a fabulous director. When we both used to live in LA, and we both live in Monterey now.
Oh, that's why you're
Robin
in town
worked at the Mark
because of
Taper.
the. Oh, I see.
Yeah, yeah.
So you don't go back and forth. Do you work down
Robin
here?
does.
But do
I'm
you?
down here for the
For the
run
play.
of the play. Right.
But you still live up north. Do you come down here to work?
I come down here to see my friends.
Oh, that's. So Robin, did you help her with the directing, or did she get it?
Robin got it. The way that I met Robin is she cast me in a play a couple of years ago, Sarah Rule's Dead Man's Cell Phone, and
Oh,
I was cast as Mrs. Gottlieb.
yes.
A wonderful
Was it
role.
at the where was it?
Oh, it was up north.
It was up north.
Actually, that's not entirely accurate. It's at Central Coast. Monterey is
Oh,
Central
right. I keep
Coast.
saying up north because it's
Yeah,
up
that's
north to
San
me.
Francisco. Yeah, we're midway between.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's Monterey, Carmel, Pebble Beach, that whole area.
Right.
Yeah. And the theater scene there is very, very active.
But what about? Let's talk about My Mother's Keeper. What
Yes.
about the lighting and the costumes?
The
and-
lighting, we have James Moody, who is a wonderful, wonderful, very well respected in the industry. We're very lucky to have him. James Moody will be doing our lighting.
And your costumes?
Our costumes we have gathered together, and they were a pleasure to do.
Did they come from thrift stores or
That and everybody has some of their mother's
Oh,
jewelry.
that's great.
Yes.
Okay, now let's go back to your kind of the influences in your life. We talked about your mother. She was a great actress on stage, and we're going to see what she did in My Mother's Keeper and
Yes.
how her mother influenced her.
My grandmother was a stand-up comedian.
Oh, so there you are again.
Right.
And then your mother's brother was an award-winning
Writer, producer, director.
Uncle Lester.
Uncle Lester created the Munsters,
That's
and
so
he
great.
was brilliant, just
And-
brilliant. And my big my big inspiration.
Tell
in
us
life.
how he was the inspiration for The Odd Couple.
Well, that's part of the play.
Oh, will you
That's
please
part
give
of.
us
You've
some
got
things?
to come see the play. Yes.
Tell us. Oh, it
What-
is part of the play?
Yes. My mother and her brother grew up with Neil Simon in Brooklyn.
Oh, I got it.
And he was one of the kids that used to come to the house. And he and his brother is, as I say, infamously fastidious brother Danny. And when my uncle was living with a very wonderful agent in this town, who is now since gone, but Roy Gerber, and they were living at the house, the fabulous house, and Neil Simon came to visit and became inspired by the personalities at play, because Danny his brother had been living up there for just a bit.
So that was the inspiration.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you recreate these things, but they're told in story form?
They're told in story form. It's a real evening or afternoon at the theater.
How do you
I laughed,
write it?
I cried. There's everything.
How
there
did
are
you write
monologues,
it?
there are duets, there are scenes.
How did you write it?
How did I write it? I remembered. And
I mean, how did you
I
get
would
them?
hear the voices, and I would grab the pen and pencil and start writing. And I was laughing. I feel funny saying I'm writing it, because I was like a scribe. I remembered and I heard. This is an old cliche for writers, that it came through. But truly, I was a very observant child.
Can this go on film, to TV, to...
Absolutely.
Are you looking for
I've been
a
approached.
series?
Well, I've been approached saying this has to be on film. This has to be on film. Meanwhile, I am involved in the stage production, and next year we're taking it to New York, bringing the Coles back to Newcastle.
That's fabulous. And before we leave, tell me, what is Magic Circle?
Magic Circle Theater is a theater in the Carmel Valley that I worked
Another
at a
theater
lot.
you talked about.
Yes, I worked at a lot, and I recommend it to any of you who are going on vacation up in the central.
There's something always
California.
going on there?
They're wonderful productions, wonderful.
And what would you do? Would you go back on stage again and dance and sing?
Not dance. I used to sing a lot. I would love to actually, if I didn't play this part, I would love to actually have the opportunity to direct this show.
Oh, you would like to
Yes. Right now, my goal is to keep producing the play so that it is produced all over, because it's such a universal theme.
I keep seeing you as doing all the roles, and I see you as doing a monologue again, and writing a one-person show for yourself.
That also has been that also has been suggested to me.
Well, we're going to wait for that. Jane Press.
Well, I want you to come to the play.
We're going to
I
all
want you to come to the
Everyone's
play.
gonna come.
Everybody come.
And always on Mother's Day, we should look forward to that.
Absolutely. We have 2 shows on Mother's Day. My Mother's Keeper plays at the Electric Lodge Theater on Sunday the 12th, Mother's Day. 2 shows. A
And
matinee
it's in
at 3,
Venice, California.
Venice, and
So
8 o'clock at night.
thanks for watching. Thanks to Jane. Thanks to Ann. Thanks to the art on the set.
Thanks, everybody.
And thanks to the Hollywood Museum. Keep writing to my email at jaquinn1@aol.com. See you next time.